So all of this is purely about promoting the book. So I then continued to work harder in terms of the promotion of the book and all of those other factors. I worked very hard in terms of the PR. Now, the publishers work in a way that, like they sort of worked about 60 or 70 years ago. They really have no concept of a lot of what we're talking about here. Some of them are starting to look into it, but they have that you do a launch, you try and get some PR, and then you ignore the book after about 4 or 5 months. For novels, the maximum that they'll do any work with a novel is about 9 months, unless it's a monster. This isn't a novel, obviously, but then there should be more legs within this. But they have a very small amount of money to spend, particularly if you're black staff. I said, let's not do a launch, because launches are for friends and family. You're hoping they're going to buy a book anyway. It's just an ego-based thing, and much as I have a massive ego, it seemed to me to not be a particularly beneficial thing to stand there with my mum saying you're great, and my aunt coming along and saying you're great, and all of these things, because I kind of just didn't, I didn't want to have those conversations. They had a little bit amount of money, so we spent as much money as we could in PR. I hustled my way across to the Open a couple of years. They gave me a bit of money to go across. And I literally spent about 3 days haranguing the BBC, haranguing Chris Evans, which I never got anywhere with, it's worth bearing in mind. And Chris Evans is a very keen golfer. His wife is a golf pro. And I assumed that he's about my age. You'd have assumed that it would have been the sort of thing that he might want to cover. He never did. So that's parked, a lot of effort gone. But I did manage to get through to John Inverdale, who did some spiel on me for about 20 minutes on Radio 5 Live on the Saturday of the Open. And the great thing about this is if you come back to direct marketing principles, I'm able to monitor every time I got a piece of PR the effect that was having upon my book sales. So a piece of PR, for example, in the Belfast Telegraph saying, John Richardson, local author, gets his book to #1 on Amazon, actually makes, within the business section, I'll sell a few copies of that. There's nothing in that at all. A guy called Liam Kelly, who writes for the Irish Independent down here, was a very big, great supporter of me in the early days. I haven't spoken to him for a while, but he just loved the whole thing. He did 3 or 4 articles, and that used to consistently get me to #1 every time he would do an article. But that used to get me to about a number 1,000 overall on Amazon. So I stood there at the Open at about 1,000 overall, because Liam Kelly had just done something in the Irish Independent. And John Inverdale then did a great piece on me, standing live on the 18th. I can't remember what day it was, probably the Wednesday before they started the Open. But no, it wasn't actually, it doesn't matter, but it was at the Open, and there are a lot of people listening to him, in their offices or any of those things. And the book got up to, I think, about 100 overall. So you're at 100 overall on Amazon, you're #1 in sport, you're probably 2 or 3 in autobiography, and you're comfortably the top-selling golf book. So that was fascinating for me to sort of phone home to my wife and say, where has it got to now? And then what he did was, he's a really, really nice guy. He said, have you spoken to Torrance about this? And as I say, Sam Torrance said, and Sam Torrance is a really cantankerous man, to be honest. Now, I love him dearly now because he really helped me. But he's a difficult character, very, very difficult man to get hold of. You never get through to that big, if any of you will watch the Open there, they're sitting there in this wonderful big BBC caravan kind of mobile home thing. And there are no peasants allowed anywhere near them at all. Peter Alice gets drifted through by Rolls Royce, and you just don't get through to them at all. The security of the Open is bizarre. It's like getting back into the centre of Belfast, in the mid-70s. It's bizarre how difficult it is. But he said, you won't get through to Torrance unless I help you. So he marched me through, whilst he's still, can't do that. Now, he marched me through whilst he's still recording his show, an incredibly professional thing to do. And he took me right through to Sam Torrance, and just be careful of that. He took me right through to Sam Torrance in the wee hut, and Torrance was on live at that stage. And Mark James, who's another famous golfer you may or may not know, he came out and he was massively positive about the whole thing. And he has a reputation for being very difficult too, but he was hugely positive. So I'm standing there talking to Mark James, just been on the John Inverdale, feeling like I am king of the world, that it's all gone brilliantly. I've hustled my way through here. Everybody else has ignored me, but I've got here now. The book's #100 overall. I'm kind of here. I'm about to meet Torrance, and he's going to say, well done. And of course, Mark James is already bigging me up and said, this is incredible. So I'm standing there, and Torrance comes to the back door of the big mobile home thing, and he's standing up on that sort of height. So I feel like I'm in the headmaster's office, because he's quite an intimidating character. And he comes out and he goes, yes. he opens the door that amount. And I go, oh, that's not what I hoped for. And John Inverdale is off again, recording live. So Mark James has to sort of be my agent through to Sam Torrance and go, this is the guy, this guy has done this thing. John Inverdale's just talked about him. And you told him to dream on. And he goes, when was that? And I said, well, you were at Royal County Down a few years ago and you played with a friend of mine. And he asked you, he said, wasn't me. Now, I had used this in all of my PR, so I am literally making a bit of a mess in my pants, to be honest, with nervousness, because it had been through all the PR. He's very concerned. I thought I'm going to get sued here. And I went, it was. I've seen the pictures. He's there, and it wasn't. I said, you sort of. I think it was, literally like this. I was like this, going, oh, don't be rude to me, and my mummy. And he said, no, it wasn't me. He said, I have never played at Royal County Down. Now I've seen the pictures of him at Royal County Down. So what do you say? So you can't say, yes, you have. No, I haven't. Escort him out, and there literally aren't security guys there. And I said, well, I've probably got that wrong. He said, but you said to a friend of mine about this challenge that I was doing, and I eventually did it, and I've just been on John Inverdale, and he was brilliant. And Mark James is going, he realizes that Sam Torrance is being very rude to me. And he goes, do you not think it's a great story? I mean, he went from 103 to break par within the year. I think it's an incredible story. So Sam Torrance softens a little bit then. He goes, yeah, it's very impressive. So what do you want from me? And I was like, and I happened to have a book in my hand. And I said, well, I didn't know what I wanted from him. I wanted him to give me another quote that I could then spin off in terms of all of my guff. And he said, I said, I just wanted to get a book into your hand and to say, thanks very much. And he said, all right. So, and I said, dream on. So you've used that for the title. He went, right. Yeah, that was clever, wasn't it? And I was going, yeah, well, so he buggered off. And I thought, that's me. I'm going back across. That's me sunk. He's going to destroy everything. Because potentially he might say, I never said this. You're a chancer. Arguably I am, but at least it was true. And, take this off the book. And I don't know, many of them had been printed. I just thought this is a nightmare. So on the Sunday of the Open, he had obviously read the first part of the book, which is all about him. And he'd remembered. He'd remembered the incident. And I don't know what was going on in his head. And it's only about 40 seconds long. But he made a very, very complimentary remark about it and said, very well done, young man. This man came along, a friend of his came along, and I told him to dream on. Do you know what? He did it, and I'm going to change my whole belief about all of these things. It was fantastic. And he went from 103 to, I think he exaggerated it to my benefit somehow, but he came up with this amazing story. And my book sales went absolutely berserk. So I went to number 13 overall. It stayed as the best-selling sports book for over a month. Best-selling autobiography for 2 or 3 weeks, and it sat at the #1 position on Amazon for 9 months in the golf charts. So it radically transformed it. But the point behind this is, it was social media. Don't be thinking that social media is one of those things that can sometimes produce that kind of a result. It can be very, very beneficial for you if you have a big enough following, and I'll come through to some examples of that afterwards. But it was the use of the social media, the PR, the direct marketing, the generating of all of those things spun together that finally got me through and in front of Torrance. Now, I got in front of John Inverdale based upon a connection that I had made with another journalist who I had met through Twitter. So I had this little band, as it were, of relatively junior journalists, some of whom might have been able to get me up the step to John Inverdale, and then John Inverdale gets me up the step physically to Sam Torrance. So this is a social media into PR kind of a story. But as I say, that was not my outcome. So the result of all of this was number 13, after being through all this best-selling UK biography, blah, 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 best-selling golf book in the UK, 2009, and a US book deal. And I only got the US book deal by guaranteeing that I would continue to tweet and continue to do my work. So it was floundering in the US as well. The thing was so frustrating, because you think you have the best-selling golf book in the UK. You would assume, and it's a rags to riches story. It's an American story as far as I was concerned. I always felt it was an American book. Come on, you're against the odds. You can do it, John. And but they didn't want it either. I had only had about 24 rejections there. But the people that eventually took it said, we will take you on, but you must guarantee that you will continue to use the social media thing. And then they got me to speak to some of their other authors. They wanted to use some of the stuff that I had done. So I would not have I might have got it eventually, but I don't think I would have got the US book deal if I hadn't done all of the social media stuff. Because to an extent, they were seeing my success in the sales of it as being a social media thing, whereas social media was really just the start to lead me on to good old-fashioned PR and TV, and it just gets no better than that. That's how you sell lots of stuff. So that's really the gist of how this all worked. Now, the next thing that came off that was, as you can see, I used YouTube quite a lot. I don't know how many people have watched that, but you know, that is me on TV there. That's BBC stuff. So those are getting about 6,000 odd views, those two. This has had a lot of views. I used YouTube a lot. So if you go back to some of my initial stuff that I was talking about there in terms of my little source of denial things, I've got video and the use of video as one of those really key points that are there. So I was approached, and this is where this thing becomes a sort of a story where you realize you actually have to do some of these social media things, because this is how people are trying to contact you. In the old days, what would have happened would have been a film producer who had read the book would have gone through traditional ways and found out who my agent was. They'd have phoned the publisher, and then the publisher would have given the agent's details. The film producer would have gone on to the agent and said, "You are the agent for John Richardson. I'm interested in his book." But the film producer contacted me directly through direct message on my Break Power Golf site on YouTube. So they bypassed all of that other stuff. I don't have my email address in the book. All I have in here as my contact details are my Twitter account. Now, you can sort of get me through that as well, but that's the way that I use this. So it's also worth just bearing in mind, I talked about this being part of the initial sales pitch. At the start of this book, it should be much more obvious. It shouldn't be this hard to find. Yeah, here it is. If you'd like to learn more about the various techniques and practice drills that I used during the year, go to dreamongolf.com. Dreamongolf.com is a different page to that squeeze page that I talked about before, because I'm then giving them different information, which is basically saying, hopefully you enjoyed the book. Here are all of the things that I learned. It's a different message to that. And also I can track it in a different way. So I like to see all of these different ways. For all of these different mechanisms, I can see where the traffic is coming from. What is working for me, what isn't working for me. So that's what I'm interested in. I'm not really interested in the 38p to a pound that I might make out of the book. I'm interested in the email address and what I might sell to them after that. So the film guy got hold of me through, as I say, through YouTube, through another social media channel, because I'd been working on these. And I didn't do all this exceptionally well. I just tried to get myself out there in as many different ways as possible. I ended up with a second film company then bidding for the rights, and that makes it sound as if there's a stack of money exchange. There wasn't, but because it was really just selling the option at that stage. But it strengthened my whole case. And on the Artifice film site at the moment, there you have James Nesbitt, who has agreed to play me in the film, and they're going to start shooting in July. So that changes everything. You know, this becomes something that came out of a book that had 83 rejections and then hustled your way through. Now, there is money within that for me. There's not huge amounts of money. It would have been, you know, the wildest lie awake at 3 in the morning exciting dream that somebody would make a film out of it and you'd get somebody like that. But that's where it is now. So it's moved from being best-selling book to that. That'll massively catapult sales both sides of the Atlantic. It could still fall through, but that's where we are at the moment. I'm seeing the film guy on Tuesday. They have the money. They don't have quite enough money to do the thing that they want to do it, but I think that's just the case within the film industry. But as I say, they'll start to shoot in July. But that was not my outcome. The outcome, which I'll come on to a wee second. The other part of this is, and you need to be very aware of this within social media, if you're going to stand out there, put yourself in YouTube, put yourself, you know, blog lots, tweet a lot, do all of this guff, you're actually sticking yourself out there in a way that in certain Northern Irish terminology, you really can be perceived as being too big for your boots. We don't like people who do that in Northern Ireland. So this is a guy who literally stalks me in terms of bad reviews. And he puts bad reviews in my coffee shop books as well, just to say, I can't believe this guy's now doing this here too. So I've got 58 reviews for this book. I can do this without any concern now, because there are 58 reviews for that, for Dream On now, 54 of which are very positive. It's gone extremely well. Nobody has that amount of reviews on Amazon. Bear in mind, I'm also driving reviews. I give people time when they contact me when they've read the book, and people come on to me and they say, I've got these 3 questions about your book. And it's a pain in the neck after a period of time. It's very exciting for the first few times. You think, oh, they want to contact me. And then you think, I've got to write maybe, one guy wrote several emails to me, all of which were approximately 1,500 words each.